Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency, and today is May 17, 2021. And today is episode 111. I'm going to be reading my new Medium article, 2-year prediction for CX and UX professions. It's gone a little bit viral on LinkedIn, and I've had some very interesting responses to it. So I thought I would turn it into a conversation here where I would read it, and as I read it, I would react to any comments, questions, disagreements from the live chat. So people can join in and share their thoughts on what I'm talking about. And again, it's a prediction. I don't know if it'll come true or not, but I think it's starting to come true. So I think it's a fair prediction. But again, we don't know. Welcome to Shannon, who is very excited that she is here for the countdown and the theme song. So I'm going to share my screen, and that way people can see the article. And also I'm looking at the article, hi Curran, from a private browser so that I'm not logged in, so that you won't see the names of all the people who've been highlighting it, because it's got a lot of claps and there's a lot of highlights. And so I want to make sure we're keeping everyone anonymous. So people should be seeing my screen as well as me in the corner, and of course our little tip jar. So thank you for any super chats or super stickers or tips. Those will end up in the tip jar. And again, comments and questions are welcome as I go through this, or disagreements. So here we go. So I wrote this April 23rd. It's on Medium. It's not behind the paywall, so you can easily access this if you'd like to share it or read it or save it forever. So here we go. It's April 2021, and I have a prediction. I'm often asked where UX is going, if it can be saved, and who will be our seniors in 5 years. Let me tell you where I think it's going, because I think it's going in two directions at the same time. The divide has started, but I believe it will deepen and widen before settling into a very new normal. There are and will be two groups: UX UI designers, UI UX designers, UX designers, and product designers are often, but not always, visual designers who make wireframes. They rarely have extensive knowledge of cognitive psychology, human behavior, and the true foundations of user experience. They rarely have expertise in research. They tend to go by feel or what they think will work or solve a problem. They don't always do usability testing, especially if the company or teams believe you test concepts after they're released to the public. Many, but not all, like design thinking, design sprints, so-called lean UX, which is neither lean nor UX, and ways that we can get everybody to do the UX or be designers or design the product. The more you have everybody working on the product, the less you have to work on the product. The less there is a spotlight on you if you happen to not be great at information architecture, interaction design, problem finding, or problem solving. They believe that good UX is looking at something, caring about customers, and making something you think might work for them. Over the next 2 years, this has the power to teach everybody at our workplaces exactly what the message is. UX is easy, and everybody can do it. They're getting the message now, and this will be, and continue to be, reinforced by boot camps, online courses, and other programs that package UX as care about users, run some workshops, and find a solution. I'll call them UX UI designers. And this is where UX and CX will further divide. UX will become the thing everybody can do, mostly in workshops and team exercises. CX will be something done by specialists. The other group contains CX researchers, CX architects, CX visual designers, CX content strategists, and CX data scientists. They're not going to take orders. They don't want to be told, we're ripping off the competition, or just wireframe Sam's idea, or get something ready for engineering in 2 days, or hold more workshops. They believe in user-centered design and human-centered design. They believe in complete customer centricity and put it into practice in every phase and every step of every task. It shouldn't be built, and if it somehow were built, it shouldn't ship, if it doesn't match real users' and customers' needs, tasks, behaviors, perspectives, and accessibility requirements. They don't want to be called designer because that seems to go with make it pretty or just tell me where to put that button. They studied cognitive psychology. They approach projects with strategy, science, and technique. They know that problem finding and solving are about way more than your mindset or thinking. They're about doing, but we're smart enough to not try to popularize the phrase design doing. They are looking for respect, autonomy, and more time and budget to do their best work. They don't want to cut corners. They believe in quality over speed. They're grounded in proper research. They see the difference between collaboration and approaches that sail past normal collaboration and dock at design by committee, decision by committee, design by workshop, democratization, where somehow only CX and UX gets democratized while all the other domains retain their power, and the like. They love collaboration and they reject by committee and democratization as not user-centered design or human-centered design, not best for the customers, not customer-centric, surprisingly ego-focused on how might we instead of how will customers easily. They studied, practiced, and integrated UCD, HCD, cognitive psychology, human behavior, and information architecture into their work. If they are into research, they worked to learn more about CX research methods, good and bad questions, techniques, and more. Basically, they're going way, way deeper than everybody in online courses and boot camps. They have mentors and coaches who check their work and help them level up. They never stop learning. They are change agents. They want to make everything they can better. The customer experience, internal team processes. This is in their blood. Hey, wait, what's the difference between a UI designer and your CX visual designer? The CX visual designer has studied some psychology. They've trained on accessibility. They're not going to create a color palette that can't be used by the colorblind. They're not going to use font sizes that are too small. They're not going to run with new morphism or any trend that is bad for accessibility. They're not going to design gray on slightly lighter gray. They will consider fonts that work well for dyslexia. They understand the difference between information architecture and interaction design, and I make wireframes. They are change agents. They will utilize great qualitative research in their design approach. They're true CX partners, not a pair of hands adding what I've heard called paint or polish to interaction designs. People who aren't interested in the foundations, deep quality, and technique in CX, and I have found many of those, can be called UX UI designers. The rest can be called CX visual designers. Everybody's hung up on titles, right? Let's start making them mean something. If you have studied psychology and you're obsessed with UCD, HCD, and the customer experience, you will have a CX title. Basically, everybody else can be UX, UI, and product something. These two paths are why there are completely opposite opinions on things that seem obvious to the people on each path. Design thinking, really making companies more empathetic? Or total theater, wasting time and money on fake UX? Design sprints, great for innovation or completely undermining and undervaluing UX. Designing products via workshops, everybody's a designer. and letting non-CX and UX teammates make decisions in our domain great for the customer experience or awful for customers, workers, teams, processes, etc.? While each of these has plenty of middle ground and gray areas, many people are quite polarized on these. They are deeply for or against these and other aspirologies. This is another way we know we are on two completely different paths at the same time. The people who love that Google's Coursera UX course spends 2 weeks on what are some things people in UX do, and then goes right into design sprints, are on another planet from the people who can't believe that a course calling itself UX is more focused on design sprints and self-reflection than UCD and HCD. It reminds us that there are two very different definitions of UX that don't appear to be reconcilable. UX can't be the thorough science and technique of UCD and HCD done properly by specialists, and also be the quickie shortcuts done in team workshops where specialists might not be required or utilized. I predict that UX will come to relate to pretty wireframes and prototypes mostly done by visual designers. There will be lots of team exercises and workshops with various names that come with various books, training, and certificates. UX will be what our company does when it wants to play startup dress up and pretend they're in a Silicon Valley garage. Workshops will be plentiful and will rarely have success criteria or KPIs. If everybody had fun sketching screens, this workshop was awesome. CX will be almost the opposite. It will be educated, knowledgeable, and talented researchers taking weeks or months to bring competitive intelligence and deep customer and market knowledge to the company. It will be processes that reject guessing and assumptions, always opting for researching, testing, and knowing. It will demand people truly skilled in information architecture, accessibility, problem finding, and problem solving. It will require the right success criteria, metrics, and qualitative data to constantly know if we're headed in the right direction. It will reject the wrong metrics or myopic metrics, see my article on that often fish for short-term wins that have long-term consequences. Which means there are and will be two types of companies. There already is a divide. We often talk about low maturity companies and higher maturity companies. If low maturity companies have CX or UX at all, they generally want UX UI designers, people who they see as the new production designer who will give them the wireframes they want. UX UI designers are assessed often only by their portfolio, which will be heavy on visual design, but of course have some wireframes and walls of sticky notes. UX UI designers by any name will be, and currently often are, a pair of hands getting wireframes or a prototype to engineering. These low CX maturity companies are primarily an engineering-driven organization and secondarily a marketing-driven organization. Engineering might not even keep the UX UI people around once they have a design system. Engineers might imagine that they just need to put out the components on the screen any old way, and it's a good user experience. The higher CX maturity companies believe in customer centricity. They believe in R&D, research and development. They believe in R before D. They want to know. They want to reduce the risk that comes from guesses, assumptions, hypotheses, and we know our customers. They don't believe in creating products that are minimally viable. They believe in using customers' definitions of quality and done. They will hire the CX researchers, architects, and others. Their HR processes weed out the UX UI designer, production designer, and people who like to guess at solutions without a solid UCD process. Higher maturity companies are primarily driven by knowledge of customers. Everything else is influenced by that knowledge. Strategies are determined by that knowledge. Initiatives and goals utilize that knowledge. Deep knowledge and understanding of customers isn't a luxury or a marketing line item. These companies know it's business intelligence that can lead them to market domination. Just a reminder for those joining late, put your questions and comments in the room. I'm going to address them as I go through the article, and I'm about halfway through the article. So disagree, agree, thoughts, comments? How to tell the two companies apart. In addition to how these companies describe jobs, assess candidates, and include CX or UX in processes and teams. Sorry, I've been talking all day. Let me take that again. Switching to chloroseptic. Let's try that again. In addition to how these companies describe jobs, assess candidates, and include CX and UX in processes and teams, you'll be able to tell the two types of companies apart by when they fail fast. Here's me asking an audience of agile coaches and scrum masters when they wish they could know if their product is right for customers. I think the far right dot was placed before they received the instructions. I think they marked when they find out now. But who knows? April says I jumped in late. Who wrote this article? Me. Thank you for asking. So the screen for people listening to the audio-only version is a screenshot from a poll I ran during a talk I gave in April, and it's a little graph showing the process with CX and then engineering, and people could draw a dot to say when they wish they could find out their product is flawed and going in the wrong direction, and most people drew dots around CX research and CX concepts. One person drew a dot post-release, which seems a bit late. One person drew a dot on early planning. So for the most part, they seem to want to know we're going in the wrong direction before engineering builds it. Then I asked something similar when I gave a keynote at a marketing conference. Pretty similar slide. When would you want to learn the product? Kayleen says, what is the y-axis of the graph? Good question. The y-axis of the graph is just a, what's the word I'm looking for? An estimate of the relative amount of risk and cost. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't on the first screenshot. As we move further in our processes and deeper into projects, the risks and costs are higher and higher and higher the closer we get to engineering building it, releasing it, the public having to use it, marketing is marketing it, sales is selling it. So it's not an exact number on the y-axis, it's more of a relative look at that. So the marketing people drew their dots mostly on the left side of the graph around early planning, CX research, CX concepts, usability testing, CX finalizing, and a little bit at the beginning of when marketing starts their work. That's when they would want to know the product is flawed. Next is actually the most highlighted paragraph in the whole article according to Medium. Low maturity companies might say they want to know early that the product is going in the wrong direction, but they will ship crappy products and services to customers and call that agile, lean, or being like a startup. They wait until after release to test the product or get feedback. They're slow, reactive, and surprised by customers' reactions. They waste a lot of money shipping guesses and having, or pretending, to fix them later. They fail fast, really slowly, late in the game, and in the public eye. High CX maturity companies will stop planning, conceptualizing, engineering, or a release when they know the product is going in the wrong direction. They won't wait until some or all of the public has to deal with this. They won't be happy if we shipped it fast, if it's not the right execution of the right idea. The failures will be mostly internal versus seen, experienced, and tweeted about in the public eye. If so many companies fit the first low maturity type, where will the CX change agents work? I predict that faced with awful jobs on awful teams at awful low maturity companies, those falling into my CX research, architect, and other CX titles who can't get that rare job at the high maturity company will leave corporate jobs. they'll stop applying. Why work at a place where you are nearly immediately a flight risk or trying to quit? They won't even bother unless the company sends the right signals that they are high maturity and customer centric. I want to interrupt my article for a moment and say that I had 2 conversations today randomly about this. 2 high-level experienced CX, UX change agents. One of them said to me, "I'm not sure I can take a corporate job again. It's just such a disaster." And the other one said, "I don't think I can take a corporate job unless I'm going to be put in charge of the UX team and I'm going to be building the team and practice." These are the change agents. They don't want these jobs anymore. So back to the article. I predict that within 2 years from now, 90% of CX change agents will be found at agencies and consultancies. 10% will have found a good job at a high maturity company. Low maturity companies won't even be able to hire them full time. The workplace, processes, and outcomes will be too undesirable. I predict that low maturity companies will have teams of UX UI designers or product designers who like to wireframe and focus on the aesthetics. They're okay taking orders so they can get it done in a sprint or whatever time frame engineering says they can have. These companies will be overrun with design thinkers and product by workshop. If anybody can do UX, then everybody will take a shot at designing the product. There will be no accountability. If the product fails, it was everybody's fault equally, and no one will want to take that blame. So we'll just spin up another MVP. That's where one path is going, and that's who will be on that path. UX UI designers, and whatever title you give them, will be the new production designer. The practitioners doing CX and UX tasks with science, technique, proficiency, critical thinking, and a bizarre ability to see multiple possible outcomes won't want to work there. People following in the still visible footsteps of Don Norman will only be found through agencies and consultancies. And you will call on them when you have done the math and realized how much you're spending on workshops, mindsets, sticky notes, sketches, guesses, assumptions, hypotheses, and we're fast. Hi, Darren. This means there are and will be 2 kinds of agencies. There are agencies and consultancies who take orders gladly. They're very happy to just make wireframes, hand over some pretty designs, and give clients exactly what they ask for. They're unlikely to challenge the client, product, or feature. They're essentially an outsourced team of UX UI production designers taking orders and not making waves. They're not change agents. They don't reward critical thinking. They often don't want to invest in problem finding. They just want to take whatever problem the client suggests and find a solution. They often start with workshops, have workshops in the middle, and end with workshops. Design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, they're going to trot all of them out. Critical thinking not required. The agencies that will rise up in the coming years are the change agents. It's really easy to hire non-change agents. You can find those people everywhere. You won't need agencies that staff those people and use those approaches. How will you find the really skilled, talented, and scientific specialists? Those will be the agencies and consultancies to look for. I will call them change agencies. That's where you will want to work. That's who companies will want to hire. Let's take a breath from the article and take a look at some comments, and I apologize for my spring allergies. Elijah says, this whole prediction reminds me of what happened with InfoSec. Nobody wanted to include or do real cybersecurity until companies started getting hacked. Even then, they didn't do good InfoSec. So instead, a bunch of InfoSec-focused businesses started cropping up. Now much InfoSec work is done by these third-party companies. Great point, Elijah. Thank you for that. Solomon says, an ongoing challenge is convincing leadership to allocate resources to perform research in the first place. Yeah, so that's going to be the other path. Those people are just going to keep on guessing and do their production design. Kayleen says, has anyone noticed an increase in change agencies being created? I have. I'm seeing more of the most competent people that I know out there not necessarily taking corporate jobs or stopping applying for corporate jobs and trying to get more freelance or start their own agencies. I am definitely seeing more of that given the, 3,000 people I'm connected to on LinkedIn, many of whom are in UX. So I would say I'm starting to see that. Okay, moving back to the article, and sorry for my sniffly spring allergies. For the next 2 years, and of course, Kayleen, Delta CX is a change agency. Solomon says, I believe it's due to this and other challenges, showing the value of UX beyond qualitative metrics, that designers have adapted their method to fit agile methods of digital product orgs. Yeah, but that's not working. You know, we've tried to adapt to everything. No one's tried to adapt to us. So that's what's going to be changing. Anna P., good to see you. It's been months. The path of freelancing is starting to look good. Looking into that for the next year, actually. See, Anna P. And Anna P. knows what she's doing. She's really good. Everybody hire her. Believe me, I would hire all y'all if I could. I've got to get more work, and then I'm hiring all y'all. So back to the article. For the next 2 years, we will fight it. I will send my new completely free HR recruiter, sourcer, hiring manager training to everybody I can, especially those sending me ridiculous jobs I refuse to even apply for. Those who believe in quality over speed will keep fighting the crappy workplaces, ridiculous jobs, requests for unicorns, and what I call moving target jobs, which ask for so many skills that there's no way you're ever going to work on the right thing at the right time. Someone will keep changing your priorities. You were coding? Where are your wireframes? You're working on wireframes. Where's your visual design? Moving target. You've all had that job. And slowly, over the next 2 years, the ones who are fighting will leave those jobs to be freelancers. The freelancers will get together and create agencies. Agencies and consultancies will have more qualified staff than your average big name, you know who I mean consultancy. They will have lower pricing and rates than those consultancies. Big name consultancies, mostly hiring UX UI designers, will be hired less and less often because they're order takers and yes sayers versus being critical thinkers and change agents. Change agencies will have strong and highly competitive apprenticeship programs. They will create the unbelievably strong low-ego action heroes who will be our seniors in 5 years. Over in the corporate world, the UX UI designer, production designer will eventually be promoted to a senior UX UI designer. And if they make it to manager, they will happily bring in these agencies and consultancies because they will understand where their team's abilities and capabilities have limits. Looking at some comments in the chat, Shelly Briscoe, good to see you too, says, wow, this same storyline is playing out in the learning and development world. Content managers posing as instructional designers. And Shelley, I've also seen a lot of learning and instructional designers posing as UX designers, which is even weirder because they're so unqualified in almost all cases. Shelley continues, when the training department is finally forced to move the needle via training, then and only then do they seek out true designers of instruction. Great point, Shelley. I know that this is not the only industry where this is happening, but we've got to say these things out loud, and I want people on both paths to be prepared for what's coming. Darren says, loving the agency evolution paths. Thank you. So back to the end of the article, and then we'll continue our conversation. So please write all your comments, questions, disagreements in the chat. That's where I think this will go. We can keep fighting. We can work to save CX and UX. We can try to explain the value of design and reasons to be customer-centric. If companies aren't accepting that, they will lose us. But there's only so far they can get without us. The customers decide the quality of your product no matter what an agile coach, scrum master, product manager, or high-paid person says. Companies who don't want to release product and service garbage will need CX specialists. If they can't hire them full-time, they will find another way to include them on mission-critical projects. They will bring us in as agencies and freelancers when they realize that nobody there can do anything close to what we do. CX and UX will be saved, but I don't see it being a viable full-time corporate job again for quite some time. It's about to be dominated by freelancers, agencies, and consultancies. So that's my article, and thanks for listening. That took a half hour. That wasn't too bad. Let's take a look at what's going on in the chat room. Tango is here. I was thinking about you today. Hi, Catherine says, although not every UX design needs to start from scratch, there could already be a best practice of certain function that one can borrow. Sometimes we can borrow from best practices and existing paradigms, but only if that's going to work and make sense for our target users and customers based on what we know from good research is their task and their knowledge and their needs. So I'm not against using a tried and true thing, but only if I'm sure from research that it is the right thing to use. I'm not just going to use it just because it's tried and true. Tango says, agree. Cool. Darren says, interesting points, Shelley. Folks have been posing as instructional designers dating back to the late 90s. It's why I left instructional design. Shelley says, true, I want no part of UX. So thanks to everybody for the lively chat happening in the chat space. And let's see, Kayleen says, if we compare with InfoSec, then it doesn't seem like companies will think to hire CX or UX in-house. Not yet anyway. Again, I think a lot of companies think they're hiring CX and UX when they bring in the visual designer who likes to make Figma prototypes. They don't even know what they don't even know. When I do my talk at a lot of especially engineering conferences and I trot out user-centered design, one of the things that I'm saying to people, especially this year, is like, okay, here's interaction design and prototyping. It's one phase of a huge process that we do, and it's informed by what came before it. That's how we know our interaction design is good. If you think UX is wireframing and prototyping, which is one task or two tasks of one phase of a much larger world, if that's what UX is to you, then you can have it. You can call it UX, and I'm going to stop fighting you, and I'm going to stop trying to redefine UX and try to teach you what UX means. We have not been able to change people's minds for 20 years on what UX means. To them, it is wireframes and prototypes, and not necessarily with any of the rest of this. Not necessarily with good information architecture, not necessarily with any research or user testing or even good research or testing. You know, maybe someone said, I ask clients what they want. Not that. So if that's what UX is, and we can't convince them 20 years in that UX is something else, that's why I think we need a new term. And I'm going with CX because it's got respect. Gartner and Forrester are pushing CX like mad. Customer centricity is starting to be all the rage and being written about and talked about and budgeted for. I think if we connect ourselves to customer centricity, which is where we belong, it's going to make a lot more sense than UX, which people still think is making pretty screens. Sylvia says, so many times I've been told Google does it, so it must be right. For sure. And I also see, well, Amazon does it, so we should do that too. That's not disruptive. That's not innovative. Is this the same company that's telling everybody they're disruptive and innovative? Not disruptive, not innovative, not good internal process, not good user experience. I've dealt with that at companies where I've worked. Hey, just rip off this competitor. I like what they're doing. But is it right for our customers? That's where the research comes in. When we do the observational research and we have the task analysis, and the optimized task flow, now we can say What do people need? What are they doing? What's their workflow? What are their tools, knowledge, workarounds, artifacts? What are the questions and obstacles and issues that are here? How do we improve that? So just because Google does, I mean, man, I worked for about 3 minutes on something years ago because a very famous agency had built a website for a very famous hospital and medical system I won't name. And they decided that because Google's homepage is just a giant search box, let's just use a giant search box for this hospital and medical system, and everybody can just come to the site and search. Meanwhile, this site had diseases, conditions, clinical trials, doctors, offices, insurance information, where to park, treatments, side effects, medical groups. I mean, the amount of stuff that was on that site was really, really wonderful, but staggering. You could put a certain type of cancer into their search and you could get hundreds of results, if not more. And the famous agency launched that, and then it was declared a bit of a failure. That would be the order-taking agency. That agency wasn't wearing their critical thinking hat. I was brought in to fix it. They said, oh my God, we need your talent, skill, and subject matter expertise. Can you please fix this? And so I said yes, and they hired me. And then you know what they said? Fix it, but don't fix it. If you fix it too much, how are we going to explain to this client that they just spent X dollars, 6 figures, maybe 7, on this website that failed nearly immediately? So, fix it, but don't fix it, because how are we going to explain this? And I was like, I quit. Elijah says, most probably won't, some will, but yeah, that's why this prediction hit so hard. It's already happened in other fields. And I wasn't going by other fields. I was just going by watching my own field. I'm already seeing the divide. And writing the HR training made me see it even more clearly. And I think the divide's just going to get bigger. I don't think it's going to come back together. Shannon says, just because it works for one audience doesn't mean it works for another. I had to create an RV rental site and they wanted it modeled off Airbnb. Yes, no, maybe, only if that makes sense for your audience and what you're selling, renting, doing. Solomon says, I think we started why less often. So yeah, I'm happy to take other comments, questions, thoughts on this. Again, it's a prediction. It's not that amazing in a prediction because it's based on what I'm already seeing happening. I'm just predicting that it's going to diverge more, and we're going to put some stakes in the ground as to what we call these things. They're going to end up with different names, and we're going to have 2 different practitioners, 2 different companies, and 2 different agencies. And eventually we're all going to know the differences between these 2. And when someone says, I am a CX architect, you're going to know what they do and how and where. And when someone says, I'm a UX UI designer, you're going to know what they do and how and where. Solomon says, started asking why less often. Yes. Gotcha. Any other thoughts, questions, disagreements, alternative predictions, improvements? But I'm already seeing this. Like I said, I've had 2 conversations today where people I admire and trust and know are quite advanced in the CX UX world told me, I don't think I can take another corporate job. It's just too much of a mess. And some days I think that, but then I think what my other friend said, which was, I would take the job if I could come in at a high level and build the team and build the practice. And I kind of feel the same way. I love the individual contributor work, and I'm happy to do the individual contributor work, and I do it at my agency. But if I took a corporate job, I would really want to be creating change for that company, making things more customer-centric, truly improving customer satisfaction and fine-tuning things so that customers would want to give us 5 stars out of 5. Solomon says, why this feature? Why this product? Why this process? Why are people having a negative experience? Yes, a lot of change agent and critical thinking stuff is asking why. It's asking why, it's doing the research to learn why, and then it's taking the right action to make sure that we've done the right things about what we learned. Without that, it's the old guessing and assuming and who knows what. While I wait for some more comments and questions, just a quick reminder that the Concentric Conference is coming up next week. It is completely free. Please register at deltacx.com/concentric. Make sure while you register, you pick a free mentoring session with someone because you can't come back later and pick another one. One per person, please. And we still don't have all the talks up on the website yet. I know that's a little bit late since this is next week, but trust me, it's good. So don't forget to register and block out the times in your calendar. So hit deltacx.com/concentric to learn more. Kayleen says, Deb, what would be the pros of a corporate job from your perspective? Well, from what I hear, and this is going to be a little bit America-centric since I deal a lot with Americans, most of the pros of a corporate job are the perceived stability of a corporate job, and for Americans, the health insurance. A lot of Americans imagine that if they have a full-time corporate job, they're less likely to be fired than the freelancer or the contractor that the company is working with. They're going to fire those people before they fire me. And many people want the full-time job to subsidize or cover their medical insurance. Now, just because you're a contractor or freelancer or agency worker or agency owner doesn't mean you're not going to get health insurance. Just means you have to pay for it yourself, so it feels a little bit more expensive. But anybody here want to talk about the pros of a corporate job? I'm not sure what they are other than perceived stability, which we learned during COVID, it doesn't exist, and health insurance. And also the ability to eventually be promoted. So if I'm doing freelancing, contracting, and agency stuff, I'm not going to climb the ladder. I haven't been able to climb the ladder. I've never been promoted past principal, which is why I can't get a job as manager. So if you really wanted to climb that ladder, you probably want some corporate jobs to try to climb that ladder and get to manager, director, whatever. I guess that would be another reason. Sylvia says, during my last corporate job, I've been doing fake UX, so I see the divide, and I believe that consultancy freelancing is going to be the best option. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for sharing that. And again, I'm just predicting based on what I'm seeing. This is not my best prediction ever. I've predicted much more interesting things, as many of you know, like the time I predicted in the early 2000s that someone I knew would die of eating cake in 2012, and I learned a year and a half ago that they died of eating cake in 2016. I was surprisingly close. I'm usually good at predictions. Tango says good pay, and I say not always. When I worked at Macy's, I made much more as a contractor than I would have as a full-time employee. Still, that is a corporate job. So corporate job contractor can sometimes pay more than corporate job full-time employee. You make more, but then, of course, you're not getting some of the perks. You usually don't get paid days off, and you usually don't get health insurance, but do the math and see if you're winning or losing. I thought I was winning. Elijah says, my hope is that companies will realize the value of good CX and UX, kick out the design thinkers, hire the experts, start apprenticeship programs, and actually have a higher UX maturity level, but that's the happy path. I agree. I wish every company were getting this right and being truly customer-centric, but now that we've all been fighting this for 20 years, and some people more and some people less, we don't seem to be able to make a dent, and we've tried everything. We evangelized and we didn't evangelize. We gave up our power and let people walk all over us and make decisions in our domain and go ahead, do what you want. And we fought them to have autonomy and make decisions in our own domain. We ran workshops and we refused to run workshops. We brought in design thinking and we rejected design thinking. We did design sprints and we rejected design sprints. We said everyone can do UX and we said nobody can do UX but us. We have tried just about everything. And I think until companies wake up and do the math on how much money and time and customer trust and support and marketing and sales they're wasting on bad product, services, and experiences, we're not going to get through. They just don't care. They want to pretend that they're super agile, super lean, and they're so lean startup. Tango says, yeah, corporate contracts. They can be good. I've liked the corporate contracts that I've had. They've been good jobs and they've paid well. And sometimes I was there a month and then the budget got cut. And sometimes I was there 2 years. So they really vary. Sorry again about the sniffling. I've got the spring allergies thing going. I watched one of my old episodes from last June just to make sure the video content was still relevant and I still gave the same advice. And I started the video with, my allergies are killing me. So it's like, a year later, my allergies are killing me. So any other, while you guys and gals and others give me any thoughts or questions or disagreements, I'm just going to give you quick show notes on what's coming next. Tomorrow is the once a month when I'm doing double office hours. So there will be office hours at 10 a.m. Italy time and also 6:30 p.m. Italy time. So there will be double office hours tomorrow. Wednesday, there is no broadcast as I am speaking at a meetup. Thursday was going to be the YouTube subscribers only stream, but I still haven't heard from you paying subscribers what you want me to stream for you. So I guess I'm pressing pause on that until someone tells me what you want for your very, I'm grateful for your subscriptions. Thursday, not a thing. Friday, reaction stream after I do a talk at an Agile conference. Monday the 24th, I'm going to read my other new Medium article, which has also kind of gone viral, and we're going to discuss that one. And that one is UX and Evangelism, Undoing What's Undoing UX. So it kind of jumps off from this one, goes a little bit further, and I'll be talking about that. No streams on 25, 26, 27, even no office hours because we will all be at the Concentric Conference. So that's going to be a low streams week, other than I will come back on Friday to react to things. And yeah, I don't have a lot of stuff scheduled. June 1 will be office hours, Ask Me Anything, and Ask My Boyfriend Anything. He will be a comedy special guest. June 7 will be our live podcast specifically on the Google Coursera UX course with 3 people being a little bit of a panel. So there's that coming up too. So mark your calendars. Wilson says, oh yeah, I saw your post today about lean UX and how it doesn't belong in Agile. Well, that's what I say, but the post was really about how the guy who invented lean UX, after 4 years, is finally saying that safe Agile is not doing UX right. Well, they weren't doing it right 4 years ago when they started throwing around the term lean UX, so why is he just saying this now? That makes me suspicious. Like, what were you waiting for? Safe wasn't doing lean UX or UX right 4 years ago. What's so special about saying something out loud now? We should have said something 4 years ago. You think if somebody put Delta CX into a crappy model, I would let that go 4 years before saying something? Kayleen says, is there a difference in hiring practices for agencies and corporations? I don't know. I think that corporations it really depends on what track you're on. You know, some of both are bad at assessing candidates. Some of both are good at assessing candidates. Corporations are usually hoping that you're going to stay there a long time. I think agencies are too, but they don't always ask, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Which I don't know if anyone still asks. Anybody here think there's a big difference in hiring practices for agencies and corporations? I think the difference in hiring practices is which path you're on. How are you going to be assessed? I still have people who see my resume and say, okay, but where's your visual design portfolio? I don't have one. I'm not a visual designer. I'm a problem finder and a problem solver. That could be an agency. I've had agencies do that. I've had corporations do that. So I think the differences in hiring practices and how you're assessed are going to be based on the path you're on and not necessarily what type of business you are. But again, that's a prediction. Tango says, by the way, I am doing fundraising for a charity. I hope people will join me in the fundraising. Okay, everybody go find Tango Studio UK and, hopefully it's a good cause. I don't know what she's raising for. Elijah says, I'm just here for the ride and the learnings. LOL. Happy to support when I can. Thus, no idea about a special stream. Well, thank you. I do appreciate the people who are donating to the channel, which is donating to me, which I like to say is the Delicious Cheese Fund. I've got some feta in the fridge that I'm thinking about eating tomorrow on a hamburger. I'd like to give something back to the people paying for at least the higher tier of the memberships here. I thought maybe an extra stream, but nobody has told me what they would like that to be. So I am waiting to hear from all y'all, especially those paying for the higher level membership, on what you would like your extra perks to be for being higher level members, other than extra support of me, for which I thank you. We're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, so if anybody has any questions about today's content or the show or what's coming next, let me know. Otherwise, we will look at winding up soon. So yeah, and don't forget Concentric. And maybe if you're watching this way in the future, there's a Concentric 2022 you should be registering for, but I'll probably plan that in early 2022. So please register, deltacx.com/concentric. Tango says, can you take a look at the website below? What are your initial thoughts and UX critiques? No, because that's not what this show is about. This is not office hours. Ask me anything. YouTube also blocks website URLs so that I don't get spammers. Thank you, Anita, for just registering. So Tango, you'll have to contact me privately and ask me to look at your website. Just Mags, who I wonder if Maggie P, says, what are you most looking forward to for Concentric? All the speakers getting me their topics and bios so the website is complete. I think that was the wrong answer. What am I most looking forward to for Concentric? It's hard to say. I handpicked a bunch of people to build their own tracks. They all built really neat tracks. So there isn't a loser in the bunch, in my opinion. Last year I had people apply, so there was a lot of people unknown to me who I just picked for their topic, and mostly we got great people, and we had one or two talks that I think were a little weird that people didn't really connect with. So I think this year it'll be interesting because Darren's picked a bunch of speakers, Dr. Seth picked some speakers, Elijah is running his own track. Sherry Byrne-Haber is running a track on accessibility. I'm going to have a track with some of my greatest hits and some other people who didn't fit into the other tracks. And May, who is new to me, May is doing a track on LGBTQ+, intersectionality, race, diversity and inclusion. And that should be just super. I've just heard so many great things about May. Diana Serra says, happy to learn from you, Debbie. I can wait for UX jobs to have work-life balance, not a unicorn. Oh, I can't wait for UX job to have work-life balance, not a unicorn. Yeah, as I say in my training, We are not jacks of all unicorns, and we shouldn't try to become jacks of all unicorns. Mag says, looking forward to it, couldn't make it last year. Yeah, and most things will be recorded and on the YouTube channel probably in June. I'm going to have to edit everything. And I think May's channel didn't want to be recorded just because of some of the sensitive discussions of very personal issues of race and discrimination and who's out and who's not out. So I think those will not end up on the YouTube channel later, but everything else I believe will, unless a speaker doesn't give me permission. So it should be good. It should be a lot of work. I'm already yawning. Who did I say today I'm going to yawn through my show? Just watch me. I did not sleep well last night. And I'm sniffling through my stuff. And no, I cannot take anything for spring allergies. Don't start typing me all the drugs I should be taking. I can't. It's a long story. I just can't. Because last year I ended up in the emergency room when I took over-the-counter nasal spray. I have weird allergies to things that no one can diagnose, and I am afraid to death of taking just about anything. But luckily, the emergency room was really helpful. I was there about 6 hours, and I learned how good my Italian is because they wouldn't let in my boyfriend because of COVID, and I didn't have to pay. So let's not believe it when they say that socialized medicine is death panels and the Wild West. It was pretty good. I'm for it. I remember asking them if I have to pay, and they looked at me like I had 4,000 heads. And I said, America? I said, in America, we pay for an emergency room visit. She goes, you were code yellow. And I'm like, do I have to pay you? Nope. Kayleen has a thanks doc emoji. So I don't know what that looks like. It's coming up on my screen as thanks doc. So I don't know. But yes, thanks to the good people at the local hospital, who I think was the same hospital that treated George Clooney when he got hit on his scooter when he was here filming. So yeah, I do trust the medical system here, which was something I didn't feel in America. Hey, we're running out of time and now we're getting really off topic. So thank you again to everybody for joining in for my new article and for contributing to the conversation. And we'll do it again next week with my other article, which has gone a little bit viral. So I'm curious about people's reactions and opinions to this. But I thought it was interesting, especially Elijah's comments today, that he has seen this in other industries. And I think it's going to be the way to go. So if you have any last comments, everybody write them now, because I think I'm going to wrap up, even though it's a few minutes early. I do have another call today, and then I'm going to fall apart and go to sleep. Oh, how do y'all do it? Oh, Aftab is here. How have you been? What are your predictions for the need for higher education, master's, PhDs for UXRs? Great question. So my prediction is that there will be and I didn't put this in the article, I think there will be a swing towards academic degrees. Ooh, somebody just did something. I don't know what. I get the emoji explosion when something good has happened, but normally it says what? What did someone just do? Someone tell me, what did you do? Thank you for whatever you do. What was it? Aftab, I'm predicting that there will be a swing towards more academic-based education and a swing away from the boot camps for anybody who wants to follow the CX path. For the UX UI path, you can boot camp it all you like. But I think that for people who really want to learn psychology, some of these things are you can watch videos about them, but sometimes I think there are better learned at a university level, like cognitive psychology. Darren says, yes, please. But I also believe that while there will be a rise in more academic education for CX people, I also believe there will be a huge rise in apprenticeships. So I think in some cases we'll get people with a lot more formal education, but I also think we'll still get people who have less formal education, who were self-taught or just kind of fell into it with natural talent, natural skills, and great personalities, like many of you low ego action heroes and many of the apprentices that I've been giving a shot on some of my Delta CX agency projects. So I think we're going to see both, but I do think that for the CX track, we're going to see a drop in boot camps and junky stuff with bad promises, but I think those will still be hot for the people on the other track who just want to do a little wireframing, visual design, and just have empathy. Darren says apprenticeships are extremely valuable. Yes, I think we have 2 of my apprentices in the room, right? 3 apprentices in the room right now in the chat room. So, hopefully they would have something nice to say. Darren says, cheese, 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 boot camps should be extinct. I agree, but I think they're going to carry on in popularity a little bit longer for the people who want the super surface education related to UX and think that that's going to get them a job. So I think they're still going to have popularity. I'm predicting for another 2 years because I think that's how long it's going to take Don Norman to get it together and tell us how we should be learning this. And even then, can we see if we even agree with him? Darren says they should also be massively restructured. Yeah. Or go extinct. I've been saying change or die for at least a year now, and some have changed and some have died, but mostly they've still been garbage. Anita says, hopefully apprenticeships become mainstream. They still offer the value of opening up the industry to diverse talent, but promise legitimate skill building. I'm hoping that for my apprentices and where I can do a better job. I hope y'all will tell me. But I've been trying to pick people by talent and personality and not necessarily by did they get a degree, did they get a boot camp, did they take a certain course. I think that, first, in some cases, the academic education is great. I only know poop about psychology because I took 3 courses on psychology when I was in college, and that still influences my CX and UX work to this day. So I definitely am a proponent of academic education, but even Darren knows I don't love every degree and degree program out there, and many of them need some restructuring and redefining because some of them have just become longer boot camps. I've seen some of the portfolios that come out of some of the schools, won't name names, and I'm not even sure what these people learned. Tango says, if the conference is free, why do we need to enter ticket details? So that I can email you how to get into the conference, and so that I have counts, and so that you can book free mentoring time. Everybody gets 1 mentoring session per person. Do not register multiple times, but that way I can organize and coordinate who's getting mentoring with whom at what time. So I am using a registration system. Oh, Tango, you too. It says enter credit card details, but once you pick that you are buying 1 free ticket, the credit card details go away. Aftab says, any master's degree programs or schools you'd recommend? So far, I've mostly heard really good things about University of Washington in Washington State. I've heard a couple of good things about Bentley, but I also know that these are both quite expensive and they're not going to be for everybody. While I do want more educational options to be available to more people, and I know that academic education isn't always available to more people, that's why I think for the CX side, we're going to see both tracks flourishing. We're going to see more people getting the academic going the academic path, but also more people going the apprenticeship path and self-taught plus apprenticeship. So I'm predicting both for CX. Darren says, no, Bentley stinks, outdated and synchronous. Okay, I didn't know. We looked at it on our episode of looking at schools, and it looked okay. I think I gave it 3 dogs. Darren says, DePaul isn't bad. I haven't seen that one. Yeah, so off top, if you look at my episode a few days or a week ago on how to judge programs, just use my technique. Use my technique to judge programs and judge for yourself if you think they might be a good match to what you want to learn and where you want to go. So if you watch that episode or even just the beginning of that episode, you'll learn my technique and then you can use my technique. And you don't have to keep asking me, what do you think of this one? And what do you think of this one? Judge for yourself. Darren is saying he's a couple of other ones he thinks are pretty good, but I'm going to disagree because I've seen some of the portfolios from one of the ones you wrote there, and they were all pretty disastrous. So remember, I'm seeing portfolios from people doing these or finishing these. So be careful because I can tell these people did not learn the things. Darren says certain programs just produce arrogant jerks. I don't know. Maybe these programs attracted arrogant jerks and they just came out the other side being the same people. Darren says, oh, my review is curriculum based only. Yeah, I looked at Bentley's curriculum and I thought it looked okay. These other ones, I don't know what their curriculum is, but I've seen some portfolios from some of them and it made me not want to recommend those schools. So, all right, we're out of here. We're 5 minutes late. Thanks again to everybody for hanging out. I'm going to play us out of here, but I'll see everybody twice tomorrow for office hours. Ask me anything. And Darren says, me too until I went there. Okay, we'll battle this out another day. Grr. That's not my dogs. That's other dogs outside. Aftab says, you're the best. Thank you. No, you are. Okay, everybody, be well. Wear 72 masks, and I will see y'all tomorrow for office hours. Bye. Eat cheese.
Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation